Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sunday Speaker Series online. I am Pamela Morales de Hendricks, the Communications Officer for the Museum of South Texas History. And today's Sunday Speaker Series online presentation will feature Pino Shah. He is a local photographer. His presentation will focus on the Lower Rio Grande Valley historic architecture on still film photography. So he's going to talk a little bit more about what that means. But before we start, I just want to make a few quick announcements. So, as always, our Sunday Speaker Series online presentations are recorded. They are published on Facebook and also they are posted on the website. So please search Sunday Speaker Series online at mosthistory.org. So if you have to leave during the presentation or you want to share the presentation with family and friends, you can definitely do that through Facebook or, of course, the website. And another thing, just really quickly, we will be having Fiesta de Noche Buena online programming this coming week, starting December 11th. Chocolate caliente, so hot chocolate. We'll be talking about that, the history and all the good stuff. And then, of course, on December 12th at 3 and 4 p.m., we will have how to make pan de polvo and tamales. So just, quick announcements. So let's just go ahead and start with Mr. Pino Shah. Welcome to the Sunday Speaker Series.
Thank you. Okay, let's see. I need to get my screen shared. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for the opportunity of presenting. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the project overall, because there are many people that may not be familiar with the project. And I've been doing a presentation on this project for the last 3 years. But I'd just like to give an introduction first of what the project is about. So let's start with what exactly is the Lower Rio Grande Valley. So the Lower Rio Grande Valley is essentially the map that you're seeing on your screen right now. It's the 4 border counties that border the United States and Mexico. Now, I sent the invite for today's live to a global audience. I'm blessed to have over 99,000 followers across the world and in the United States. So those of you that are from the United States, you may already know this information, but there may be others that are not from the United States that may not know the information. So just bear with me while I cover that. So you're looking at the very southernmost tip of Texas. If you look at the US map, the area that forms the V, okay, that's the very bottom portion of the V. That's what you're looking at on the map right now. So we have the 4 border counties of Starr, Hidalgo, Cameron, and Willacy County that border Mexico. So the bottom region where it says Rio Bravo, that the section below that where it says Matamoros, that is Mexico. So I live in the place called Mcallen, so you can see how close it is to the border, okay? So a little bit of my background, okay? My first name is Deval, and the way you pronounce it is Deval, and my last name is Shah. And for the sake of simplicity, I just go by Pino because I invariably get called, the devil. And I'm like, okay, let's just keep this simple. Pino was a nickname I had from back home being India. So I just stuck with that. So my brand name is also Pino. So anywhere you go online, ArtByPino, that's where you'll find my online presence. I'm from Ahmedabad, which is a city in the western state of Gujarat. Now, the unique thing about Ahmedabad is that it's a 609-year-old city. And so I grew up for part of my life from the age of 13 to about 18 years of age in Ahmedabad, okay? Ahmedabad 2 years ago got nominated as the first World Heritage City by UNESCO, the first World Heritage City in India, that is, by UNESCO, because it's got so many historic structures there. I mean, it's not uncommon to find people living in homes that are anywhere from 100 to 250 years old. Okay. I came to Edinburg, Texas in 1987 to what was back then called Pan American University to do my MBA in general business. And I've been blessed through my career to do information technology, digital publishing, and online marketing. Okay. I stayed in the Valley for about 20 years, and I left the Valley for about 8 years. And I lived in places around the United States, Washington, D.C., California, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Texas, Minnesota, which I call Siberia because it was so cold over there. And then I also got to travel to a few places around the world, primarily for photography. Okay. So it was during these 8 years that I did the traveling, and that kind of helped me broaden my horizon, if you may, and look at what the rest of the world was through the eyes of the lens. Okay. January 2016, I had kind of a life decision to make as to where do I want to spend the rest of my life. Okay. And in those 8 years that I'd been away from the Valley, I kind of appreciated the Valley a lot more. And having had the opportunity to live in different places, travel to different places, I realized how great I had it being in the Valley. Okay. So I always joke about, like in the Bible, it says the land of, milk and honey. I call the Valley the land of raspa and elotes. Okay. So I returned to the Valley in January of 2016. And just since then, I've decided to just, stay here. Something else happened in June of 2016, and which was I went on a 15-day road trip to Eastern Europe. And that kind of sealed the deal for me to say, you know what, I've done a lot of IT work. I've been blessed to do some very high-profile projects across the United States and specifically in the field of healthcare. And now I want to pursue photography. So June of 2016, that's what I started doing actively. I didn't completely give up IT. I still do IT consulting work, but it's more of a secondary thing. And my primary passion is, photography. Since June of 2016, I've been blessed to have published 7 books. That wasn't the plan. It started out as, okay, I'm going to publish one book, 30 pages, 40 pages, but it's just been a blessing. And to date, I've been able to publish, 7 books to a worldwide audience. And I do my own publishing, self-publish, okay? I often get asked this question when I'm doing presentations is, what equipment do you use? So on the digital side, I use the Canon 5D Mark III. It's actually a refurbished body that I bought many, many years ago. It's a very old model, but it does great for what I need for it to do. So the only thing that you really see new on that list mentioned over there is the 11-24 millimeter lens. Everything else is, are things that I just, purchased, refurbished. And the point I like to make over here, well, and the iPhone 12 Pro, I just got that after 5 years of using my previous iPhone. The reason I like to also share this is just to prove a point that you don't need to have the latest and greatest equipment to take great photographs. Okay. So, and then of course, I'm kind of short. I'm 5'6". So a short letter is always helpful when I'm doing my photography. And then the Maverick Pro drone for my aerial shots. Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, you mentioned that the valley is the land of raspas and elote. Do you have a favorite raspa?
Orange.
Orange. Okay.
Orange but here's the thing. So you ask them to first put in the bottom of the raspa, you ask them to put a scoop of vanilla ice cream. Then they put the ice, and then they put the orange syrup on top. And that is heavenly. And the other thing about the valley that I love, which compared to every other place I've been blessed to visit, is the evenings in the valley are uncomparable. They are just fabulous. Even in the middle of the summer, even though if it's 94 degrees outside, there's something magical, charming about the valley evenings. Okay. So,
Wow.
okay. A foundation of my success. Okay. And of course, I consider it to be a blessing, whatever I've been able to accomplish. But these are some of the folks that have been, they are my foundation of success. That's the best way for me to put it. The first is Stephen Fox. Stephen is an architectural historian, and he is a lecturer at Rice University in Houston. And he's originally from Brownsville. He's a Brownsville native, but obviously he lives in Houston, teaches at Rice University. And Stephen's done extensive research on Texas and the architecture in Texas. Okay. So he has provided the narratives for one of my books, the one you see on the architecture of the lower Rio Grande Valley, the black and white cover. He's written all the narratives for the 40 structures in that book. But Stephen has also been my advisor for my other projects. And because I often get asked the question, how did you come up with the structures? Stephen is the one that has given me the list based on his research as to what to photograph. Okay. Eileen Mate, she is a freelance writer based in the Valley. She's from Harlingen, and she writes for the Texas Co-op Power magazine, Texas Highways, and other magazines. She is a great writer. She loves to write about travel, nature, history, and she has her own books that she has done some extensive research on and published. The most recent one being For the Good of My Patients, the History of Medicine in the Rio Grande Valley. Okay. Jeff Alger, he's a historian from Mcallen, and he is with the Mission Museum, the museum in Mission, Texas, and he wrote the narrations for my Mcallen book. Okay. And then Carrie Rood, she's from Burnsville, Minnesota, and she has been instrumental in helping me get these 7 books published. Because to do 7 books in 4 years, normally it takes at least a year to do a book. The only reason I've been able to accomplish that is because of Carrie's help in doing the layout and the graphics for my books.
Awesome. Also, another fun fact, Jeff, right? That's how you pronounce his name is, his mother, Fran, was a museum director at the Museum of South Texas History in the 70s.
Wow. So he's got it in his family, because he's amazing in his research, and I've been following his Facebook posts on what he's been doing at the Mission Museum, and he's given it a completely new facelift. He's done some amazing work over there. I'm looking forward to going and seeing it in person when it's opened again,
Yes. And it has great architecture, I believe, the post office, right? That's there. Yeah.
Right.
Very nice.
Yeah, Mission has some great structures there. Enough to really literally do a book on Mission someday, As to why this project matters, okay. Reason the project matters is because the earliest documented building based on Stephen's research it goes back to 1841, which is in Brownsville, okay? And buildings are being constructed on an ongoing basis, okay? Now, buildings have 2 main things associated with them. You've got the people element, and you have events that are typically associated with a building. Now, when I say building or structure, I mean the same thing. So for example, if I say, the Pulga flea market, okay? Well, there's events that take place at the flea market, the Pulga. There's a rich history of the whole Pulga down here in South Texas in the Valley, right? So that to me is of significance, okay? So the criteria for including a structure or a building in the project, initially when I discussed it with Steve, was we said, look, we're going to focus on three things. A structure has to be of architectural or cultural or of historical significance in order to be considered for the project. Okay. So you have structures that are associated with people. There are events that may be happening in the structure. The people are then associated with the genealogy. Okay. And all of it eventually ties into what we call history. And that history needs to be documented like other history is documented for posterity or for the future, right? We don't want to dwell too much on the past, but it always helps us to know the past, to know where we came from, what has happened, okay? So that is the core of the project as to why the project matters, okay? Here, I spend quite a bit of time, worked this with Stephen, worked this with Eileen, different other minds greater than mine to come up with this, as to what should the mission be. And it's something that I refine over time. As I do presentations, I get new questions, feedback, critic, comments. I come back and I refine this, okay? So the mission is to educate the future decision makers of the Valley. Okay, so let me just define the future decision makers. My primary target audience is the sixth grader and above. Okay, those are the people that are going to be the future decision makers, the civic leaders, the corporate leaders, okay, that are going to make decisions of whether we should keep a structure, build a structure, tear down a structure, expand a structure, okay. And architecture typically outlives each generation. I mean, it's there for generations to come, okay? So it plays a significant role as part of the heritage. To give you a quick story, okay, I had not visited Mexico ever before, other than an occasional one single day quick turnaround trip to Monterrey 20 years ago. 2015, I got an opportunity to really visit, sorry, not 2015, 2017, I got an opportunity to visit Mexico. Now, until that point in time, my image of Mexico was what I had seen and picked up from the media, okay? That it was a poor country, that there was corruption, that there was crime, very little positive things. But someone convinced me and said, look, you love to take pictures of historical architecture, go visit Mexico. And after much research, I decided to go to Puebla, okay? I was blown away because they have 365 churches in just the city of Puebla. And then it's closer to, I think it's called Cholula, where the biggest pyramid in the world is, okay? And in looking at the architecture and studying the architecture over there and seeing that how well preserved it was, okay, it just totally changed the concept I had of Mexico. Yes, there's poverty in Mexico. Yes, there's corruption and crime in Mexico. Not as bad as India, where I come from, but it wasn't what I had picked up from the media, because in seeing the architecture, and the older the architecture is, the more resources it takes to maintain it, and not just money resources, people resources, a sense of pride, okay, for the citizenry to maintain and want to preserve their heritage, okay? So the point being that the architecture will not lie to you whenever you visit a place. You can tell by looking at the architecture what the heritage of that place is, what the history of that place is, okay? And that is why it says in speaking the unspoken, okay? Defining culture, molding culture, and the importance of its preservation. A lot of thought goes into designing buildings. Architectures and engineers spend a lot of time in it. Like, for example, you walk into a church, you see these huge ceilings, okay? Reason that is because the goal is to make you feel relatively insignificant by you being present in front of the divine. Okay, you go into a bank, it's designed to make it look like a strong place, okay, so that you have the security of mind for your financial resources. You go into a funeral home. So every building structure, there's a reason why it's designed the way it is, okay? And then also the goal of the mission of the project is to stress the importance of preservation, okay? If we don't teach our future generation, that old is good, that old is not bad, that old is not something that needs to be discarded, okay? Then tomorrow they'll extend that philosophy to us when we get older, okay? The scope, as I mentioned earlier, it's the 4 counties, on the border region. My geographic area, it's a 120-mile corridor from South Padre Island to Roma. That's where I'm driving up and down and taking photographs, okay? Stephen's list has 550 buildings on the US side for me to photograph. And for those of you that may not be familiar with the history of this place, this was Mexico once upon a time. So when we said the lower Rio Grande Valley, there's a very famous quote that someone said, which is, we didn't cross the border crossed us, okay, meaning that where we are today, it was Mexico. So if we had to document the history of this place, the architecture of this place, it is imperative that we take into consideration the 150 structures that are on the other side of the border that were once upon a time all considered the same area or the same region, okay? So in all, there's 700 buildings on my project. Because of the situation in Mexico, I haven't really started photographing the buildings on the Mexican side yet. I don't know when I will start that, which is my phase 3. But on the US side, out of 550 buildings, I've photographed about 437 or 447 buildings. Most of my non-residential structures, I photographed them. Now I need to approach the residential structures and photograph those, but I need to take a sensitive approach when I photograph residential structures, because people always get a little suspicious, paranoid, when you see someone standing outside your home, taking pictures of your home. So I'm just trying to finesse my style and approach as to how I'm going to do phase 2 of the project, okay? What are the tangibles, or what is all of these photographs together? What's going to happen to them, okay? So I'm creating small and large format photographic prints, okay, that I make available on my website. Eventually I'll make, calendars, bookmarks. I already have some postcards, but the big goal is the one that's on the bottom left-hand side, okay, a comprehensive search engine optimized visual database, that's a mouthful, of architectural structures on the website, okay? So today, if you had to research the architectural history of the lower Rio Grande Valley, there's no single comprehensive source where you can find that information, okay? You would have to go through multiple resources to find that information, okay? Being blessed with information technology knowledge, which has been my primary career, I design my own websites, and I'm able to search engine optimize the database that I'm going to be creating and putting online, so that if someone did a search for pulgas, for churches, for banks, for funeral homes, for hotels, for any kind of structure, then it would show those to them on the website along with the picture and the history of that place. And thanks to Stephen, who the architect was, or who the builder was, and the year it was built in. So for future generations, it would be a great reference to have in one place, okay? The other side of that coin is no one really presents the valley as a whole in marketing the valley. Each city does a great job at promoting itself, okay? But my goal is that once this information is online, that it would allow us to showcase the valley to the world, okay? Because this is one region where in one region we have over 30 architectural styles in one region, and that is something phenomenal. Okay, it's unheard of because most of the places you visit, you may have elements of one or two architectural styles here and there, but nothing as diversely rich, okay, as we do. And I mean that comparing it to other places in the United States. Okay. The other thing I envision happening is making tour maps available online. Like if someone was visiting the area, or even if people from down here, if they wanted to take a half a day trip, 1 day trip, 3 day trips, but of specific interest, like they want to see all the murals, they want to visit the ranches, cemeteries, whatever, then they can go online and find that information. So it's topical itineraries, maps, and so forth. And then the final tangible is hopefully to have a 6th grade TEKS compliant curriculum. Okay, so for those that are not familiar with TEKS compliant curriculum, it's basically Texas has a standard. And if you make a curriculum that's compliant with that standard, which is called TEKS compliant, then you're able to use that curriculum to teach in schools in Texas. Okay, so my hope is that someday that there's a TEKS compliant curriculum that's used in conjunction with this project so that we can teach our kids, the future decision makers here in the Valley, the history of the places, that kids are inspired, okay, to go want to see that place, or they may be living in that town. I mean, I've had people that live in Mission that have come to me and said, I did not know, I've grown up in Mission and I did not know that this place existed in Mission or Edinburg or whatever. Okay. Okay, book format. Again, my primary target audience being the 6th graders, okay, which someone gave me this, coined this term. They said they call them the heads down generation because the heads always stuck down in electronic devices, okay. They are attracted to a visual format, a highly visual format. So all my publications, all my 7 publications, they're 70% visual and 30% text. It's to attract them, okay? And also, they're all available as ebooks, and I will talk about that in a second, okay? So for example, here's a page from one of the book, okay? And it talks about the year in which the structure was created, what's the name of the structure, where it's located, and who created the structure or who designed the structure, okay? And then this one is Stephen Fox's narration, okay, for this particular building, okay, and my photograph. This is another building, it's in Brownsville, okay, and then the next picture I'm going to show you, just a heads up for those with vertigo problems, okay, it's an image that's looking at a building. I took this shot with a drone of the same building, this building here, but with a drone, looking down at the building. And until I flew the drone over the building, I really didn't appreciate the beauty of the architecture of this building, okay?
Where is that building?
Brownsville.
Brownsville.
Yeah, on 700 East Charles Street. It's a low-income housing complex. It's got 189 1 and 2 bedroom apartments, okay? Okay, so specifically related to the Valley-centric books, okay, number 1, the ebooks, all my 7 books, including the Valley books, are downloadable for free, okay? You can go to Google Play, search for Pino Shah, and you can download any of the 7 books for free, okay? If you wanted the print books, there's the link over there, okay? Which is basically, if you just remember ArtByPino.com, you can go on there and you can order the print books, okay? So this first book over here, this has, so what happened is, let me give you a little history on this book. When I realized that there were 550 buildings that Stephen suggested that I should be photographing, because we went back and forth on it. We started with 30 buildings, 70 buildings, 100 buildings. finally, I told him, I said, look, Stephen, I want to create the most comprehensive body of work for architecture in this region. And he started laughing. I'm going, what's wrong? He goes, be careful what you ask for. Okay. And long story short, he ended up coming with the list, which is now 550 buildings. So once that sank in, I said, look, Stephen, it may take me years to photograph 550 buildings. I said, in the meantime, can you just pick out certain number of buildings that would be like an appetizer version of the overall project that would give people a glimpse or a view of the richness of the architecture and culture and the history of the valley. So that's exactly what Stephen did. He picked out about 40 structures, and we put together this book that has what I call the top 40 buildings of the valley. Okay. And they go from 1841 to 2016. Okay. The other book I have is Brownsville Architecture. So without any hesitation, I will say that the most historic place in the valley is Brownsville. They have done a phenomenal job at preserving their architecture. This building covers the top 100 buildings of Brownsville. There are more than 100 buildings, but Irene and I, we decided that we were going to focus on the top 100 buildings. And so that's what this book is about. Okay.
And another thing to note about Brownsville, you had mentioned earlier about the diversity of the region, the valley. Brownsville has a lot of French inspired buildings. And you go to I went to New Orleans a couple of years ago, and I'm like, why does this look like Brownsville?
Right. Good point. The next book, Mcallen Architecture, again, Jeff from Mcallen, the Mcallen historian, he did the narrations for this book, and it covers the top buildings in Mcallen. Okay. And then Quinta Mazatlan. Interestingly, this was my first book. In terms of the order of book releases, that was my first book. And even though previously when I had lived in the valley, I had never visited Quinta Mazatlan or kind of even heard of it until I started photographing for this project. And I went over there and I was just stunned that it was within the city, it was this close, and I did not know about it. So I asked them, I said, do you have a book on Quinta Mazatlan? And they said, no. I said, no, as in you don't have it in stock, or no, as in there's no book? They said, there's no book. And I was just stunned. So I talked to Eileen about it in a conversation, and she goes, I've always wanted to do a book on Quinta Mazatlan. I go, great, you write it, I'll photograph it. We did this book in 30 days, okay? Photographing the version 1, photographing it, her narratives, and she was like, Pino, this is the fastest book I've ever done in my life, okay? And again, thanks to just everything fell in place. It's a blessing, everything fell in place. We got the book done, okay? Again, one more time, the ebooks are free. Please download them, rate them, review them, okay, so that more people can hear about the valley. If you download them and rate them, it will show the books to more people from outside the valley, okay? Okay, I'm going to give you a quick preview of a few pages from each of the books. Okay, so give me a second here to switch screens.
And a quick question. Have you photographed the 1910 jail at the museum?
From the exterior, yes. But whenever they open it for public visit, I do plan on photographing the interior as well. Okay.
Awesome.
Because at the time I'd wanted to photograph the interior was just like a month when they were going to start the renovations, extensive renovations that the museum started undertaking. Okay.
And again, for those of you who are watching or you just joined us, we are definitely recording this presentation, so it'll be up on Facebook and of course the website.
Okay, are you able to see?
Yes, I see your screen.
Okay, great. So let me just start with the first book, The Architecture of the Lower Rio Grande Valley. Okay. So in this book, the building.
I can't see the
Sorry?
book. Yeah, I can't see the. We see the catalog, but not the book.
You don't? Okay, let me see. Resume share. No, stop share. Share screen. Okay. Now?
I see the contents. Yes.
Okay. So this book, the contents, the way this one is laid out is it's laid out in chronological order. Okay. So you have your oldest building going up to 2016, the newest building, 40 buildings. Okay. And again, the goal over here was to give an appetizer version of the different architectural styles that are in the valley. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'll just wait for the screen to catch up to you guys.
A lot of beautiful photos.
Thank you. Okay, so there is the oldest building in the valley. Okay, it's made out of wood and it sits right on the border, as you can see in the back over there. Okay, in Brownsville. Now, I just heard last month that the city of Brownsville had finally given the approval to relocate this building and to restore it. So, which is very encouraging news for me and for a lot of other people, because since I'd taken this picture, when I visited it, the front portion, most of it was collapsing. So I was really concerned that with the hurricane or something, the building would just totally demolish. So I'm really happy to hear that they are going to, preserve it again and restore it.
Where are they moving the house or this building?
Okay, don't quote me on this, but the best I recollect is it's in the MITE. Is that what it's called? MITTE district? The one with there's other old places there across from the zoo.
Yes, the downtown area, roughly.
Yeah. As soon as you get off the expressway to go into Brownsville, on the way to downtown, that first area, the historic district, I think that's where it's going, but not 100% sure. Okay. There's a gentleman in Brownsville, a historian from there by the name of Eugene, I believe it's Fernandez. He would be the right person to answer that question. He's very knowledgeable about the area. Okay. So again, there's typically one structure per page with a little narration up there. Okay. Most people, local people, keep saying Port Isabel Lighthouse. The correct name is Point Isabel Lighthouse because it's that point in the city of Port Isabel. Okay. So that is how this book is laid out. It's quite simple, easy to follow. Okay. I'm going to open another book, the Brownsville book.
Yeah, we got a question, so hey Pino, great work. Would love to know how you sustain this work from an economic standpoint given you offer the publications to the public free of charge.
Okay, give me just a second, please. Books, Mcallen. Okay. Can you see the Mcallen?
I see the chronological, yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so here's the thing. Until March of this year, I would charge for the ebooks, and it was very nominal. It was anywhere from 99 cents to $2.99. Okay. But with COVID happening this year, I just decided that, ebooks really, once it's produced, there is really no cost to it. Okay. Now, my ebooks are available. I'm blessed that they are available in 70 countries around the world, and they're available on every single ebook platform there is. However, the other platforms besides Google would not allow me to give it away for free. They required a minimum price of 99 cents because they need to make money from it to sustain their platform. But Google, they allowed me to offer it for free. That is why I direct people to Google Play to download the books for free over there. So my hope was that, okay, with the pandemic, people would feel inspired to download it because it's free. There is no cost to it. Okay. And from an economic or a business decision-making standpoint, the hope is that when people do have the money to spend, the disposable income to spend, that if they've seen the ebook, hopefully that will inspire them to buy the printed version, and that will bring in a certain amount of revenue. Okay. Now, overall, just publishing books by itself is not a money-making proposition. It's very seldom. And I've spoken to some big authors from different industries, okay, and they all have told me that unless you're like a J.K. Rowling or some of the big names in the industry, publishing books is not a venue to make money. It's a good marketing tool to publish books, okay? It's a good way to reach out to a global audience. And as far as I'm concerned in that regards, that has been true because, as I said, my books are available, ebooks are available in 70 countries. My print books can be ordered through 40,000 booksellers across the world, okay? So it's just given me that global exposure and presence from a marketing standpoint, okay, which over time, I'll be able to, economically get the revenue or the return from it. But regardless, I enjoy doing it, and I've been continuing to do it. And I'm going to talk about here in a minute about what else I have in the works.
And just FYI, Christmas is coming up, y'all. Great coffee table present.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so this is the Mcallen book. Okay, now this book, given the number of structures, as you can see, I decided to do something a little different with this. And again, thanks to, Carrie and Jeff, okay, in brainstorming this with me. So what we did is, just like the Valley book, we have it in chronological order, but we also did an alphabetical table of contents, okay? I'll wait for your screen to catch up. Okay, there you go. So what this allows you to do is, because most people, unless they're into research or history or academia, they may not know the year of the building, but they know the name of the building, okay? This allows them to find the building by the name. For example, Our Lady of Guadalupe Catholic Church, okay? So they can just look that up and, find the building, okay? And again, the rest of the format, it just follows, it's broken down by decades, okay? I'm sorry, this is, wrong title for the book, but I think I opened the wrong book. But anyway, it's showing actually the table of contents for the Brownsville book. But the point you get is that that book is listed both in chronological and alphabetical order. And we did the same thing for the Mcallen book, okay? And then the last book I just want to give you a quick preview of is the Quinta Mazatlan. And let me again redo the screen sharing so that it opens that. Okay, there we go. You see Quinta Mazatlan, it should be coming up.
Yes, I see it.
Okay. Folks, if you haven't been to this place, I mean, this is like Mcallen's top well-known secret, okay? You have to go to Quinta Mazatlan. If you have someone visiting, business trip, personal trip, and they have limited time and they are coming to Mcallen, if there is nothing else they see, this is one place for them to go see, okay? The manager over there and the staff, primarily volunteer staff, do an amazing job at keeping up this place. It is owned and operated by the city of Mcallen, and big kudos to Mcallen for the job that they do in keeping up this place, okay? It's a world, what do they call it? World Birding Center, okay? And it's the largest, no, one of the largest stucco brick mansion in the state of Texas at over 10,000 square feet, okay? So what we did in this book, Eileen and I, is we basically walk you through the house, the main building, okay? So we took each of the elements, okay, that had a history element to it, and we show you the pictures, and then you can, you know, follow along and take a tour of the house, though they do give great tours over there. But this is something to, as a keepsake to something to have, something to gift, okay, something very unique down here in Mcallen, okay? Okay, I'm going to switch back to the keynote presentation.
Someone commented on the Quinta Mazatlan that it is adobe and not stucco.
Thank you. Thank you very much. They're right. It's an adobe brick. Each brick weighs 70 pounds. And thank you for the correction. Okay.
The other great place about Quinta is the trails, the nature is great.
Yes, and they actually acquired the adjacent land, and there is, I think it's like a 3 or a 5 year development project with, in conjunction with the university and some wildlife institute, and they've got grand plans for it. You know, it's a multi-million-dollar project. Okay. Okay. Let's step into film photography. So, for those of you that are in my age group, which is the 50 and above, you probably remember 35 millimeter and medium format photography. Interestingly, worldwide, film photography is coming back very strongly, okay? The revival is unbelievable. And when I say it's unbelievable, I buy and sell, I trade in used film cameras. And so I've been following the market for the last year and a half, and prices have steadily gone up. Compared to last year, the prices are up by 30%, okay, in film cameras, costing some, in some cases, costing more than new DSLR or digital cameras, okay? Why? Because with film cameras, the rendition of the images, okay, it's deeper, it's much finer. It gives it a classic or an elegant look, especially in black and white, because of the use of silver, okay? The dynamic range that black and white images present is amazing. Grain can, if it is used appropriately in an image, it adds to the image, okay? Now, the best example I can give you is, even if you didn't grow up with film, but you've been to a museum where you've seen an old photograph, black and white, enlarged, hanging in the museum, okay? That's taken from the 1930s, 40s, you know, anything pre-1980s, okay? Or before digital came out, which is more like 2000. you appreciate the image, you appreciate the photograph. Okay, that's because of the film photography. Okay, film, it's what I call an imperfect look. It's the perfectly imperfect look. It's got a non-clinical look. It's more traditional. Okay, the nature of photographing architecture, to me, it's such that it gives the structure its due merit. Okay, and you'll see once I show you some of the images what I mean by that. And to me, it's better than taking digital pictures of architecture. Okay,
Also,
permanence.
lots of yeah, and quick a lot of the social media apps like Instagram, they're starting to have a grainy filters.
Right, film effects, film filters. Yep. Um, and that's because the 18 to 24-year-old, that generation, they are the one that are hitting film very hard. They're going for film because I get at least 1 to 2 new customers every week. I sell film also. I sell 25 varieties of film here in the Valley, the only one in the Valley to sell professional grade films and other films. And I get 1 to 2 new customers every week. And they typically are between the 18 to 24-year-old range. Okay. The permanence. Okay. On the digital media side, we've seen the formats keep changing every 18 months to 3 years. Okay. With film, you have a negative, a 50-year-old negative is still the same, and you can still reproduce from it. Okay. The loss of data, digital is great, but typically when there is a loss, it's usually a full loss. It's not really, I just lost 10 images because my drive crashed. It's typically your entire archive that's gone when the drive crashes. Okay. Photographing film, to me, it's a methodical, it's a very calculative process. Okay, because there's a limitation by the number of frames. If I'm shooting 35 millimeter, the maximum I'm going to get is 36 frames. Okay, were you going to say something, Pamela?
Oh, it looked like you might have paused for a little bit. I'm not sure if that caught kind of froze a little bit, so we might have missed the last 10 seconds that you said.
Okay, did you hear the part about the loss of data and digital is typical?
Yes, we did hear that. Yeah.
Okay, so photographing film, it's a methodical and calculative process. You're limited by the number of frames available. If you're shooting 35 millimeter, you got 36 frames to work with. That's it, unless you put in another roll. But each roll is costing you money. Not only the money, the cost of the roll, but also the cost of developing it, processing it, printing it. Okay, so it really tests the knowledge of the photographer. Okay, as far as photography is concerned, when you find out whether they shoot only digital or they shoot film also. Okay, now I personally, all my 7 books to date have been on digital. Okay, because I started on film, reviving film, a year and a half ago, and I'm going to talk about what exactly I'm doing with film as far as the project is concerned. But with digital, you have to keep in mind, anytime you see someone taking digital pictures, it's okay. I mean, it's easy really to take 100, 200, 500 pictures, and 10 or 20 or 30 of them are going to come out good. Okay, it's just a numbers game. Okay, it's very easy to imitate a digital style. Okay, with film, you can shoot a film, I can shoot the same film, and yet you and I can both get different results from it because of the nature of the characteristic of the film, and not only that, and the way you develop or process that film. Okay, and which again, digital can do the same thing, but it's hard to imitate that in film. It's not as easy to do it as you can imitate in digital. Okay, what you just alluded to about applying film filters or film effects, it's still not the same as shooting film, which is more authentic. So part of it is not just it's the whole experience of shooting with film, not just the end result, but the fact that it's a more genuine, authentic process. Okay, and it's also shooting in black and white on film is a very different process than shooting in color and applying a black and white effect, because you've got to train your mind, train your eyes to visualize a frame or a scene in black and white and then shoot on black and white film. Okay, So for this project, I experimented with 30 varieties of film. And in the last year and a half, I realized that it was an expensive proposition to develop film. So the only way to cut down the cost was to learn how to develop my own film. So now that I've gone through this process, I've standardized on a handful of film stock that I know works good for certain kinds of scenes, certain kinds of structures versus other kinds of structures. Okay.
Is lighting a really important factor in film, like taking the photo and then developing?
Lighting is paramount. Just next to composition, lighting is the next thing that's paramount in digital or film photography. But in film photography, again, depending on the film you're using, you can even use film that will work very well in low light and get the effect that you want, like your shadows, your contrast, your highlights. It all depends on the film that you decide to use. And when it comes to black and white, it also depends on how you can process it, because with color film, there's typically only one of two ways to process it. There's called the C41 process and the E6, which is the slide film processing. With black and white, it's literally unlimited in the number of different ways you can process the black and white film. And each process will give you a different outcome. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that digital is not worth anything, because as I said, I've published 7 books using digital photography. Each platform has its pros and cons, but for speed and efficiency, it's hard to beat digital. Okay. And now that I have the iPhone 12 Pro, it's literally impossible to tell that the photo is taken with the phone camera versus the DSLR, especially when looking at it on small screens. Okay. When you print it, yes, you may be able to tell, but on small screens, it's next to impossible to tell the difference. Okay. So what I decided to do is what many other film photographers do, which is take a hybrid approach. Okay. So digital is a necessity, especially for sharing. So I use the best of both worlds. Okay. I shoot on film to get all the advantages I mentioned about film. Then I scan it with digital. Okay. And that gives me superior results than I would get just with either platform. Okay. Okay. The other thing that I've been experimenting with, okay, is something called infrared photography. Okay. Now, this is not very common down here in the valley still yet, but the human eye can see a certain visible light spectrum. Okay. So we see in what is called the 400 to 700 nanometer spectrum. Light beyond the 700 nanometers, okay, it is invisible. But by modifying the camera or using the right kind of film, you can capture that spectrum. Now, this sounds like really high tech, and it gives the special effect, and it's like, wow, you're talking about infrared. You just say the word infrared, and that's, sounds impressive. Okay. However, the old masters of photography, and Julius Schulman, who's one of the best known architect photographers of all times, okay, and someone I consider to be one of my mentors. He's long gone, deceased, but I studied his books and I keep studying his work. He was one of the pioneers in using infrared photography. Okay. And looking at his pictures, and then when I started taking infrared pictures, I understood why. Okay. And I will show you the examples here in a minute. Okay. So I'm still experimenting with infrared photography. The unfortunate part about it is that there is a certain amount of expense associated with it. For the equipment, I have the basic starter equipment, and hopefully once I get more robust equipment, I plan to do it more often. Okay.
With the infrared, do you think on, I guess, from a historical perspective, say 50 years from now, you know, somebody decides to destroy a building, or a disaster happens with the infrared, say, and I guess kind of like comparing and contrasting, like 15 years from now, if somebody wanted to see that building, it would give like minute details, right, of that building. Is that sort of like a interesting way to sort of recreate that building? Say if somebody wanted to do that 50 years from now, should a building disappear?
To a certain extent, yes. What it does is it makes the structure, the form, it presents the building in a very clean and shows you only the essential part of the building when you take an infrared picture. And what I've done is, here in a minute, 2 minutes, I'll show this to you. I've taken the same building on digital, film, and infrared so that you guys can see and compare and contrast the 3 different ways of photographing the same structure. Okay, and that might perhaps answer your question. Okay. Okay, so outside the valley, I'm just going to quickly go over these projects. Galveston, Texas, again, Stephen Fox being a huge blessing to me on this project. He gave me a list of 142 buildings for Galveston, and the Galveston Historical Foundation was gracious to give me the narrations for the top 100 buildings that we picked out, and I published that book. Okay. Ahmedabad, the city I'm from, I worked on that project for 10 years. Every year when I go to India, I would photograph a portion of the city. Earlier this year, I released that book. It's my biggest body of work. It's 224 pages. I drove Carrie absolutely nuts with that particular project, just because I had 25,000 images from which to select about 550 images for the book. Okay. In the Middle East, this is the world's 3rd biggest mosque. The cost of construction of this mosque when it was built is $572 million. It's the size of 4 football fields. It's made entirely of white marble. It's just spectacular. I call it heaven's waiting room. Okay, that's how great that place is. Now, for next year, for what I'm working on, I've got a second book on Galveston coming out that focuses on the sacred places, or the places of worship, called Sacred Galveston and Bishop's Palace. And then I'm doing another book on Ahmedabad, because surrounding Ahmedabad, there are some great places to visit. And it's going to be called Trips from Ahmedabad. And then back to the valley, I'm wanting to do a book similar, like the top 40 buildings of the valley, but that includes film and infrared pictures in there. The 3rd book is right now, it's an iffy, it's a question mark. I need to discuss it with some folks, but it's on the radar right now, and I'm inclined to do it, but we'll see. It's not a 100% done deal like 1 and 2 are. Okay, let me now show you, and thank you for hanging in here with me. Let me just quickly now show you the images, okay, for film and infrared. So this is a church in Mcallen, St. Paul's Lutheran Church, I believe. And Zeb Reich was the architect. And so this is a picture taken on film. The Border Theater, this is Mission, taken on film. Now you notice there's grain in this picture, and that's intentional, okay? It gives it a very nostalgic look, okay? This is in Roma. Yes, it's in Roma. Westlaco, City Hall Fire Station, okay. Hidalgo, the first general store and post office. Rio Theater in Mission. Now this image, it was taken with slide film, okay? That is why you see the richness that you see and the dynamic range that you see, because slide film does that. It's very expensive to shoot on slide film, okay? but it just gives spectacular results. This is a home in Mcallen on 15th Street, okay, historic home. And this is the interesting thing about black and white film. If you look in the windows, through the windows on the first floor, you can see the backyard, okay? That is what black and white film is great at doing, is capturing that dynamic range, where even in the darkest area of the pictures, if you know how to take the picture right, you can preserve the details in there, okay? And so if you look at this image overall, you can see the dynamic range where there are lights, light highlights, there are shadows, there are midtones, and everything is very well preserved in the image, okay?
So basically no photoshopping. That's what I'm hearing. Because
Correct.
if you were to, if you did this digitally, there might be some photoshopping with the midtones and the highlights just to get that.
Right. No, typically no photoshopping. Plus the other thing is, if you looked at a digital image and the depth, for example, like you see on the windows on the second floor, or the ones that you see in the stone and the brick, okay, they don't appear as rich in digital as they do appear on film. Okay. Like, for example, on this building over here, like even, I mean, literally, if you were to zoom in, you could literally count, the bricks, but not only, which you could do with digital, but not only that, if you look at the glass, the stained glass, the varying shades of gray, okay, it's just overall the way the image is presented, okay, in film, I find it to be superior than just digital, okay. This is another home on 15th Street, okay, where again, if you look at the dark areas of the picture, okay, you can see the nice details in there, okay. To me, it looks more realistic. It doesn't look like a clinical picture. Now, film doesn't give you necessarily sharp pictures. If you want sharpness, digital is the way to go, no questions about it, okay. But if you want something that's more realistic, more pleasing to the eye, to me, film is the way to do it. And especially these structures that are older, I'm finding that they look better on film, for me, at least in my perception, than they do on digital, okay? This is the same house, but shot from a different angle. This is in Hidalgo. This was the first Hidalgo courthouse. Yeah, the first courthouse. The second story was destroyed, I think, in a fire or a hurricane. And very popular, famous architect from Hidalgo, Mr. Vela, I believe, he was commissioned to reconstruct the second floor and the top, and he's done a marvelous job, because if you look at the picture, the old pictures of this, I mean, it's like almost identical.
Yeah, we have some black and whites of that building in our archives.
Okay, now this is the picture in infrared. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the film picture, and you have the tree that's covering the building, you have the greenery, you do see the structure, you like the dome, it's nice, colorful. And then there's your infrared picture, where it takes green foliage, and it's called the wood effect because of the name of the person. It's called the wood effect, where it converts it into white, the green. This is a synagogue in Mcallen, just shot on film. This is beautiful artwork outside it. It shows a family, and it's this installation is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, it's intended as, to pay homage to the survivors of the Holocaust. This is one of my favorite structures in Mcallen. I just love the design. Okay, pump stations, okay? There's over 2,000 miles of over the ground and under the ground irrigation canal network in the lower Rio Grande Valley. The reason we are called Magic Valley is because they would say that you can throw anything in the ground, and as long as you provided the water to it, it would grow. Okay. So the agricultural economy is what made the valley flourish. Okay. These pump stations, they were classified as first lift pump station, second lift pump station, third lift pump station, etc. This is a second lift pump station. The first lift pump station sits right on the banks of the Rio Grande River in different places. It is the most powerful one. It typically uses engines that are locomotive engines. Okay. It sends the water to the second lift pump station. Second lift pump station then sends it to the third lift pump stations, and then north and south, east and west canal network to individual farms, homes, etc. Okay. This is shot in infrared. Okay. This is the interior of it. Okay. It's a little dismal to see the graffiti and the state it is in, but you have to understand from a city's perspective, city does not have money just laying around to be able to fix up these places. Okay. What is unfortunate is that the kids doing this, they haven't been instilled the value of not defacing this and not tearing it down. And actually the left portion that you see, it's no longer there. It was burned down. Okay. I don't know if it was burned down by someone intentionally or if lightning struck it and it burned down, but I visited it recently and that left section is gone. Okay. Now this is an infrared picture. The only way I was able to recognize that this is an infrared picture is because you see palms growing there and the palms are white. Okay. They would normally have been gray if it was just a film picture. This is what the motor looks like. So to your right, this is sitting under the water level of the canal. So to your right, the water is coming in. This motor then takes the water and sends it out to the left, and the canal opens up again and it keeps going. And then you can see the second motor has been partially removed. Okay. This is also an infrared picture because on that motor in the back, you can see the palm tree growing there and it's white.
The infrared looks like they look like they're in black and white. Is that a reason? Can they also be in color?
Yes, they can be in color. If you, it's the equipment again, it's a limitation of the equipment, limitation of resources. My goal is that someday I'm able to afford and buy the proper camera to be able to take color infrared also. But just going back again to Julius Schulman and looking at his work, he photographed the buildings in black and white. And I guess until I photograph them in color, I won't have a basis to compare them. But just going by and seeing what his work was, black and white really, to me, you'll see in some of the other structures, it really makes the structure stand out. Okay. Anytime there's color introduced in the picture, to me, it's a distraction, especially in architectural pictures. Okay. Even I do performing arts photography from time to time. When I'm shooting a drama, for example, I prefer black and white because then it doesn't take the viewer's attention away from the emotions expressed by the artist. And the costumes, for example, are not a distraction, or the background is not a distraction. Okay. Okay, so this is a picture of the Mcallen train station. And this is taken on digital. Okay, nice, clean picture, sharp. Colors are popping out. Okay. This is taken on film. Okay. There's more grain in the picture. And then this is also film, but black and white. And then this is an infrared.
Wow. You can tell, you're right about the architecture. Like now I can see the architecture, because the other photos, all I saw was like the colors and the green. And then me kind of sort of being a photography person, You could tell the colors also with the film and the digital. I like the film better, but the architecture itself, yeah, the black and white and the infrared really make it stand out.
Right. It almost makes it look like surreal or like a dreamy scene, but I'm fascinated by it. Okay, so infrared, Pamela, can be shot on digital as well as infrared can be shot on film. And just last week, I started my experimentation. So these are infrared shot on digital with a modified digital camera. Just last week, I shot my first infrared film and I just ordered some. And so over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be experimenting with shooting infrared on film to see how it differs from digital. But that film is also black and white. It's not color infrared film. This is another picture on infrared in Hidalgo. This is Mr. Vela's office, the architect from Hidalgo. It's a very old building. And he's got this plant, the shrubbery in the front that kind of covers the building. And again, comparing the different versions I've taken of this building, I prefer this one the best, because even though the shrubbery is there, the building stands out in my opinion, okay? And then you notice how the clouds are rendered in infrared, okay? More dramatic. Okay, this is Our Lady of Sorrows, taken on digital. This is Our Lady of Sorrows taken in black and white film. Our Lady of Sorrows taken on color film. And Our Lady of Sorrows taken on infrared.
Again, very beautiful. The architect, I mean, you can see the architecture on that. And the film, color film, also looks, the pinks, they're softer.
Right.
Pretty. Not to say that the building is ugly, but it's just, I guess I hadn't realized that how, pretty that was.
Right. And so what I had been doing with those 30 films I mentioned I was experimenting with is I've got my standard list of buildings and I go and shoot the same building but with different films and different cameras to see. And that's the process that took me a year and a half to figure out which ones work the best. And it's a process that will continue for me, experimenting. Okay, this is really a stunning visual. Okay, so this is Archer Park on film. And this is Archer Park on infrared. I'm going to go back again to the black and white film for a second. Okay, you really have to get your eyes to hone in, to zoom in on the bandstand in the middle. Because you've got these trees and everything, you've got the fountain, okay? The moment you go to infrared, that bandstand and the fountain are prominent. The trees are still there, but it just presents a cleaner image of the architecture.
Yeah, you can tell the difference.
Renaissance, this was done on digital, DSLR, film. Notice the dynamic range. You're walking down the hallway, the lights, the shadows, the details in the shadow. Infrared. Their courtyard is so beautiful over there. This is another perspective of that courtyard. You can see how all the foliage is white, okay? The outside, the dome. Back to film. Another film, but this time color. because I was testing the dynamic range of the color film compared to the black and white film, and I was impressed. This is also film, film, film.
And of course, you're taking photos and, like you said, doing the hybrid approach that, you're also scanning these because they're so beautiful, and technically there's only one copy. So, if you wanted to share this, you definitely need a scan.
Right, absolutely. Again, another infrared of the courtyard from a different angle. It just prioritizes for the viewer what you want to show the viewer. Okay. This is again shot from the exterior, infrared. Okay, this is another stunning revelation for me. This is by far my most favorite structure. That's a question I get asked often. Of all the structures you got, which one do you like the best? This is it. That's why it's the cover on my Valley book. Okay. If you haven't been to this place, please go visit. It's La Lomita Mission. Okay. Very peaceful place. Shot on film. The first one was shot on digital. This is film. This is also film. Okay. This is slide film. That is why you're getting that beautiful dynamic resolution that you're getting in the way it captured the light. Okay, where even if you look at the shadows, the darkest areas, it's got a very pleasing effect. Okay. Film, infrared.
Wow. Very beautiful.
And then this is a modern or a contemporary structure. It's a bank building designed by a very popular architect firm here in Mcallen, Orange Made. They do some amazing work in contemporary architecture. This is the building they designed, and I just decided I wanted to photograph it because I love their work so much. And this is the back of the bank. This is on film, Edinburg bus terminal, another architect firm that I respect for their work, Negrete and Kolar. And as you can see, the black and white film, you can see the dynamic range in this image, where outside you can see the brightness, it's not blown out. And then on the seats, as the light gets, and on the tiles, as the light gets lower, you can see how the effect is. Okay. Another more contemporary structure. Okay. Okay, last slide from my end. And the ways you can support the project, the ways you can support my effort, share it, please. Okay, word of mouth, social media sharing. Ebook is free, download it, comment on it, critique it, whatever, share it with your friends. Share your story as related to the Valley history, okay? Access to residential structures. If you know someone that lives in an old historic home, put in a good word for me, please, so that they feel comfortable with me photographing the exterior of the structure, and if they so okay it, to photograph the interior. Educators, anyone that's willing to collaborate to talk about exploring, the TEKS compliant curriculum. New structures, if you know of a new structure coming up, okay, tell me about it. I'd like to review it, and then if it seems appropriate to include it in the body of work, I'll go out and photograph it. Writers, especially those that understand the dynamics of the blended Mexican and American culture at a core or fundamental level. Okay, I tell people we live in the twilight zone. We have the best of both cultures. Okay, I need writers that understand that. Okay, Spanish language translators to take the existing books and translate them into Spanish. Sponsorships, anything is appreciated. Books, you can buy them on Amazon. You'll probably get them at a discount, but if you buy them from my website, you're supporting my work directly. looking for film cameras, old film cameras, whether to use them or to refurbish them, sell them, make money from that, and use them for the project. Civic leaders, this is my most challenging aspect, is to get an introduction or an audience with civic leaders. For example, it's been over 2 years now, and I still cannot get time to go visit with the mayor of the city of McAllen. He's seen my work. Apparently he's made good comments about it, but for whatever reason can't get to see him. Okay, so if you are the one that's been placed in positions of influence and know these people, I would welcome some introductions.
Well, thank you so much, Pino. I'm going to, there are comments on the Facebook live video. We have one from Marlou Levine. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name. She said, I have your books and they are excellent holiday gifts for our friends and family living out of the valley. The last years I sent the one from the Mcallen area with our temple, Emmanuel, and I received appreciation notes from my friends for the beautiful photos collection. So thank you. Again, as you mentioned earlier, you can visit ArtByPino.com. His books are on there. A lot of great comments on Facebook, very beautiful photos. I definitely agree and I appreciate them. I'm an amateur photographer is what I like to say, not a professional in the sense of the word, but very beautiful. Appreciate all of that. Any last comments, Pino?
No, thank you, Mary Lou, for your kind feedback. And just once you download the books, take your kids, grandkids out to go see those structures. Introduce them to the beauty that we have in the valley. That's all.
Great. Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Pino.
you.
And before we end this Sunday Speaker Series online, I just want to remind everybody that the Sunday Speaker Series online would not be possible without the financial contributions to our, community support. Visit mosthistory.org, and on the top right-hand corner, you will find the donate button. So you can definitely purchase a friendship. You can make any kind of contribution. So that way we can keep the Sunday Speaker Series online going. And there you have a list of different ways you can donate. And then quickly, next Sunday, we will have the Sunday Speaker Series online featuring chefs Melissa Guerra and Adan Medrano. They will be on for our Fiesta de Noche Buena online programming. So they will be on Facebook Live as well. And then, of course, December 20th, we'll have another Sunday Speaker Series with Allison Schottenstein. Schottenstein. She will be presenting about the story of how Rabbi Sam Pearl united Brownsville Matamoros. So both of those will be on Facebook Live. So once again, thank you so much for everybody for watching, and we hope to see you back on, back on later. So again, thank you, everybody. Enjoy your weekend, and we will see everybody later. Bye.